Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laurie Beckelman, and I have the privilege of being on the board of directors of the Municipal Arts Society. I hope you're enjoying the last couple of days. We still have a couple of other panels, and I also want to remind you that our final keynote speaker is the Manhattan Borough President, Scott Stringer. Many of you may not be aware of it, and I'm hoping that you'll stick around. He has a lot to say. The Municipal Arts Society created the Yolanda Garcia Community Planning Award in 2006 to recognize the work of grassroots community-based planners. The award showcases the amazing success stories of some of our city's most remarkable unsung heroes. It is named for the late Yolanda Garcia, the founder of Nos Quedamos, one of the most remarkable community organizations that's based in the South Bronx. We commemorate both Ms. Garcia's work and the activist spirit she brought to crucial issues in her own neighborhood. And under her guidance, Nos Quedamos contributed to her neighborhood's revitalization through community organizing, planning, and never giving up. Her strength and dynamic leadership taught professional planners and many others in city government that everyday New Yorkers often offer the most workable solutions to the most serious neighborhood needs. And once again, we will honor an individual who has demonstrated an ability to overcome many obstacles and motivate her community to create meaningful change from the bottom up. And at the Municipal Arts Society, we believe that neighborhoods are the building blocks of all of our city, and planning is a collaborative process that engages stakeholders at every single level. As communities leaders like Ms. Garcia, they continue to incorporate neighborhood needs into New York City's planning process. We achieve a greater vision and a more livable city. And now, to present this year's award, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Yolanda Garcia's daughter, who is now the CEO of Nos Quedamos, Yolanda Gonzalez.
As always, buen dia, good day. It's always a pleasure coming back in front of such key people who think this is important. So I thank you all. I just got a new toy. It's called an iPad. I'm trying to be technologically savvy. So I'm here today to present an award to a very dynamic, a very loving woman who thinks the way my mother used to think and putting people first. First of all, I would like to thank the judges, Ron Schiffman, Tom Angadi, Jean DuPont, and Harry Bobbins for taking the time out to help and make sure that this is possible at the year end. I also want to thank Eve Barron, who has always been there since the inception and always has given me spirit to be able to do this as well. It's important. It's important to recognize, hi, Peter. It's always important to recognize the good work that people do throughout the years. My mom was a visionary, the most outspoken person that I would ever know. She is my hero to this day. So with that, I would like to express some of the goals and some of the things that we should do as going forward, and not only development, looking at planning, looking at the stuff that we need to do in order to be able to accomplish the goals at the end of the day, which are people, which is really, really important. At the end of the day, if we're doing development and we're doing planning and we're doing all the goals that we are setting out to making sure that our cities are better, it's the people who reside in them. And who are we residing? Who are the people who are going to reside in our neighborhoods? Which is oneself. Because no matter what we do, our work hours demand more hours where we work at than where we live at. So you're living there with us, and that's important too. So we have to look at the whole perspective holistically, and the dynamics that we have to look at with that eye of clarity, and making sure that people who live in our neighborhoods are first and foremost and especially the children, because they're going to be taking care of us. So if we don't take care of those children today, they're not going to take care of us in the future. So with that, the Melrose Commons was created, Nos Quedamos was created in 1992. With the help of Peter Stan, who's a dear friend, an architect, and my mom, decided to say, we need to do a development and a planning that needed to be a better vision than what was being prevailed there at that point in time with the Urban Renewal Plan in 1985, which was basically take out everybody through eminent domain and not care about whoever was there. And we said, no, that's not the way to do business. That's not the way to do any of the concept that we need to put together here. We've been through here not only in the good times, but in the bad times. When the Bronx was burning, when everything was decimated, where 75% of the lots that were there in the 35 contiguous blocks were burned down and there was nothing there. We said, no, we want to be included in the plan. And we can do a better plan than the one that you have set forward. Because land is a premium, but people are also a premium. And that's the message that we want to give today. How to do development in a holistic way where families can come together and create homes, not housing, and also to ensure that whatever is being built there, it's environmentally friendly, which is also important. To take back lots and make them usable and viable for years to come, not only to this generation or our children, but at least 7 generations forward. So this way it's useful and being able to do the dynamics that we need today. With that, it is my honor and my privilege to introduce Kelly Williams, who's the executive director of Strikeback Bay Neighborhood Association. She's done a lot of work in her neighborhood, and she's been there since a child, and she saw all the stuff that was going on in her neighborhood, and doing the planning, and doing the legwork, door-to-door knocking, ensuring that her community was also well represented by what the work she did over there as well. Her organization on housing issues, anti-relocation organizations, organizing her tenants, also voting. That's the key issue. I'm glad she did that one. And with the powers to be, also co-founded La Casa, which is the youth involvement program. She's done a lot in her neighborhood, and with that, I would like to welcome Kelly Williams to the podium. Congratulations. So.
Thank you. Let me introduce myself. I am Kelly Williams. I am African American, and I am Irish American. But that's not all of who I am. I am New York City and the West Side. I am hip hop, salsa, and merengue. I'm an artist and a wannabe wordsmith. I am Martin Luther King, Doris Rosenblum, and Yolanda Garcia. Yes, I am Kelly, the shy little girl from around the way who learned to stand up to injustice. Things were different back then in the 60s. Being biracial practically was unheard of and not necessarily embraced during times of civil unrest that New York City witnessed in 1964 and 1968. The atmosphere shaped how I saw things and who I became. When I was born in 1961, home was a rented room in Harlem on West 157th Street. By the time my mother gave birth to my brother 2 years later, she was ready to make her own way and find an apartment, and she did, 328 West 96th Street. The one-bedroom apartment we would call our own for $65 a month would have been great, but the bedroom my brother and I had to share until I was 11 years old was no bigger than 5 by 12, if that. There wasn't enough room to open the drawers of the only dresser we had or the door to the only closet in the apartment, which was overflowing with clothes belonging to the entire family. The apartment wasn't suitable for a family of 4, and the building was a scary place to a latchkey latchkey kid like me who had to go home by herself at age 8 and take care of her 6-year-old brother. The entrance door lock was always broken. There were muggings in our building, and junkies would hide underneath the staircase to shoot up. I was frightened coming and going, but I loved my neighborhood. It was diverse, and I felt comfortable at my school, PS 75, the local Five and Dime, the Eat Shop on Broadway where my family would have its Friday night dinner. I belonged here. The West Side was home. Our tiny, cramped, one-bedroom apartment on 96th Street was just 3 blocks away from several buildings that were under construction. Practically every corner had a new building on it. I heard that this was urban renewal at work. But in the eyes of this elementary school kid, these were cool high-rise buildings, and I wanted to live in one. I know now that many of these buildings were public housing and Mitchell-Lamas. My 2 best friends lived in one of those buildings just 3 blocks away from where I lived. I was envious of their homes and terribly embarrassed of mine. They had 24-hour security, an elevator, and a dishwasher. We had a dishwasher too. It was me. In 1971, when I was 10 years old, my mother applied for an apartment in a newly built Mitchell-Lama, 96th Street and Columbus Avenue. We went to look at the brand new apartment, and I was so excited. It was a dream come true for me. Finally, we were going to be able to move right across the street from my friends with the dishwashers. I was crushed when my mother broke the bad news to me. She said that we didn't make enough money and we didn't qualify. She needed to make $300 a week to pay the monthly rent of $300. I was devastated. I wanted out of 328 West 96th Street more than anything in the world. The following year, my mother did what she thought was right for her family and moved with my stepfather to Spring Valley, New York, where he was offered a job. Spring Valley was an up-and-coming middle-income suburb. There were beautiful, newly constructed single-family homes. They all looked the same, but I didn't care. I wanted to live in one. We moved into an older house, but it was great. We had 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and the kitchen was as big as the apartment we had just left on 96th Street. Man, I felt like we were the Brady Bunch, even without the dishwasher. But the first day of school came, and at the end of the day, I was dropped off by the school bus, and 2 girls waited for me, and as I passed them by, they shouted a racial slur at me. I had never been called the N-word in my life. There were no black folks in the community. I ran all the way home in tears and cried for what seemed like hours. You can only imagine how happy I was when my mother told me 6 months later that we would have to move back to the city. The West Side was the only neighborhood that felt like home to me. After trying to find affordable housing back on the West Side that was big enough for our family, my mother gave up and moved us to the Bronx, where we had racial slurs hurled at us too. I hated it, and at age 12 left to live with my extended family on West 88th Street and Columbus Avenue. In 1975, my extended family, with whom I still live, took me to a Strikers Bay Neighborhood Council meeting because they needed lots of people to show support for something. The meeting room was hot, crowded, and people kept talking over each other. Some of them even shouted. I didn't understand what they were saying. They kept saying HPD, relocation, CB7, Site 40, Site 30, whereas, therefore, and be it resolved. All I could think of is, do they have any more cookies and soda left? After 2 hours of heated discussion, we were asked to take our seats because someone really important was going to speak. It was then Assembly Member Jerry Nadler. He stood in front of a packed room and spoke. I was hanging around the other teens at the meeting, and we were quietly cracking jokes and giggling. But the biggest laugh was yet to come. Assemblyman Nadler proceeded to talk about a lawsuit that was started by some group named Continue. I would later come to learn that that stood for Committee of Neighbors to Ensure a Normal Urban Environment. Nadler went on to read a passage from court documents filed by this Continue. The words that caught my attention were, Poor people constitute an environmental hazard. They bring vermin, rats, drugs, and prostitution to the neighborhood. I kid you not, I laughed hysterically. I almost fell off my chair. I thought someone was trying to be funny, really. But then something clicked, and I listened more carefully, and I realized they were talking about me. Now here I am in my neighborhood where I feel at home. This is my community. Everyone's cool with one another, no matter what race you are or language you speak. I had had racial slurs and taunts thrown my way, and they hurt deeply. But being identified as the cause of vermin, that day changed everything. I was outraged that other people had the audacity to say that just by being poor, my neighbors and I were considered hazards to the environment. I wasn't hurt this time. I was angry and disgusted. When I learned later on that evening that the city-owned building I lived in might be sold and we might have to move out of the community, I was ready to battle. Being connected to Strikers Bay on that particular evening in 1975 changed the course of my life. I had connected with a community of people, and together we could face this injustice head on. At other times in my life when racial slurs were hurled at me, I ran away and cried. I didn't understand my own power to affect change. I would not run this time. Community matters, and my community meant the world to me. Since that night as a teenager, I often felt compelled to hang around Strikers Bay. It was like a magnet. I wanted to hear firsthand what was going on and then be useful by doing anything the staff needed done. I wanted to be part of the fight for our neighborhood. Strikers Bay's office became my school of hard knocks. In 1980, after volunteering for 5 years, I was hired to work as a part-time receptionist there. It was a lifelong partnership in the making. I have used my own experience as a fuel that drives my work at Strikers Bay to make sure that people are not uprooted from their community and have access to decent, affordable housing, something my family struggled with. The lack of safe, decent housing left me feeling vulnerable and envious of those who were lucky enough to have a nice place to call home. My childhood experience left me feeling deprived and less than others who were able to navigate the housing programs that could have provided access to the housing my family needed too. Through my work on the Upper West Side, I have been closely connected to residents and found that their needs mirror mine. This makes efforts to meet neighborhood needs pretty straightforward. It's really not rocket science. People matter, community matters, decent, affordable housing matters. Without a place to call home and a vibrant community to be connected to, we can't find ourselves or a place in society because we're too consumed with what we need and don't have. It's like trying to plant a seed with no soil. My community mattered, and I needed to engage in the planning process to ensure that my needs and those of my neighbors were not excluded. I entered the grassroots game with only the drive and determination to fight the good fight. At age 14, I knew nothing about urban planning and its impact on my life and community. Therefore, I have to acknowledge many people who have been my mentors and teachers along the way. Bill Price, Sandra Thomas, Laura Jervis, Fran Barrett, Ron Schiffman and the folks at Pratt, Doris Rosenblum, and Strikers Bay's board chair, Karen Jorgensen, who I constantly turn to for spiritual guidance when I think things are just too overwhelming. And in particular, I have to acknowledge Nicole Levin, who nominated me for this award and who taught me to just do it, man, expanding the challenges I confronted and the successes we achieved. I've known Nicole since 1980 when I began to work for Strikers Bay, and she served as its executive director. She continues to be a source of support and inspiration. Thank you, Nick. The struggle to build and maintain economic and social justice continues for me and everyone at Strikers Bay. Some of what we've accomplished seems like a miracle, but when I pinch myself and realize that there's so much left to be done, battling cynics, government bureaucrats, and racial prejudice is something you don't do to win awards. It's in your blood, your heart, and soul. So being selected as the recipient of this year's Yolanda Garcia Award is an unexpected but welcomed honor. Thank you for creating this award, for recognizing me, and for highlighting the importance of all the Yolanda Garcias out there who are committed to grassroots planning and fighting the good fight. Thank you.
I take my award.